he and Alex were booty butt cheeks tier at the very bottom of the entire tier list for way too long.
To me, this is a much improved character, and various tier lists I'm seeing up online, it's like people are like, yeah, this is a good character, relatively good character compared to where she was, which was, worst in the game or second worst in the game. Now she's, I've got her, 10 spots up from that. Wow.
It probably won't land this low when all is said and done, but from what I have seen so far, people are saying, yeah, he's got potential, but they haven't been able to realize it.
Go look at the results, because he's still placing in pretty much every tournament that you can see out there. And yeah, he's not in the top 8 anymore, but there's still a number of players who play him and are placing with him. He's a YOLO character.
But we are going through our Street Fighter V season, 5 tier list. We'll probably do one more of these at some point after Luke comes out and the game gets updated again. But it's been a while here with this current set of characters. Now that we have V-Shift and such, hasn't been a balance update in a while. And hey, we wanted to charge through and put together a thoughtful, nuanced EventHubs tier list. John, did you have anything you wanted to say or add before we jump into this?
Yeah, it's we're trying to do this and really get our channel and stuff going. So if people can leave a like, I know people always asking, begging for likes and stuff like that. It actually helps out the channel a ton. Only takes a few seconds if you guys can punch the like button on our videos. We'll be asking kind of going forward. Sorry about that, but it really does make a huge impact. And if you remind people, they tend to do it more. But you asked for thoughts on the tier list. Oh my goodness, I've been playing the heck out of this game, trying to really get going. I'm actually hitting a pretty good spot here. I'm up right around 50,000 league points, and playing the hell out of Rose and playing a lot of other characters. And man, this game is interesting. It's way better than it probably has ever been before. The offensive defensive balance is good, and we want to get into every single one of these characters and tell you why they suck or why they, maybe not too bad. But yeah,
this first one here is going to be the characters that we think suck the most, or are good the least. Either way, yes, most suckage, least goodage. So, okay, we haven't shared each other's lists with one another, so we're going to be finding out for the first time live with you guys what each other thought, and then I guess at the end we can compare and contrast notes, and then you guys can yell at us in the comments, but I venture to guess we may have the same 44th character overall. I'm going to ask you, we'll say it on 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3, Dan.
Yep.
Yeah, hey, there we go. Synced up good. Tell us why Dan sucks the most.
He really seems to be constantly overrated. I don't get it. His appearances in tournament are just abysmal. You've seen a few top players pick him and try to run and do stuff with him, but it's like they're not meaning him. They're doing it to troll people, right? But Dan's actually, one of the things that he does have going for him. And before I get into that, actually, John, do you agree with that? Do you think that's a pretty fair assessment of where he's at?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a pizzazz about him. He's cool. He's amazingly well designed in terms of his animations. I think they did a really good job making the Dan character, the joke, the highlight, all of that stuff. But they've also designed him poorly on purpose. They trained him wrong as a joke. Kung Pao, baby. And this was one of the easiest picks for me on the whole list. Like, yeah, he's got that infinite that he used to have. Yeah, there's been some standout moments in tournament, but he's not getting much done otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say Dan is actually not bad up close. And that's one area that he has going for him. He's actually quite strong. But and there's not a ton of zoners in this game, so I think this is actually the best version of Dan we've maybe seen in a Street Fighter game. Maybe Street Fighter Alpha, where he's a secret character, maybe he's a little better there. But for the most part, Dan's been a joke character. He's not a joke in this, but he's probably the worst, And once you lab him, he falls off so heavily. He's Dan. You're going up against him. You assume he's never going to be plus on block. Well, he's got numerous, scenarios where he can actually do that, and you just kind of assume it's going to be your turn, and it's not, because Dan, right? And that's kind of what he has going for him. But the moment you shut that down, the moment you take that, he's just not that great of a character.
Mm-hmm. And when damage in this game, this kind of applies to everybody here, but with damage in this game, I don't think anybody, no one you can count out fully. They get the right they get the right V trigger, they get the right mix up, they can melt your life bar. Most characters in this game, if not everybody, can do that. So, and Dan as well, but the amount of times he's going to do it is probably fewer than most everybody else. All right, number 43 for me, Blanka.
I've got him in a different spot. But,
do you have him in this first 11 batch?
Yeah, he's really close to this. So
where'd you throw Blanka at? We'll talk about him next.
I've got him at 42nd.
Okay, so just one away. All right, so why is Blanka the third worst character for you?
he falls apart really quickly once you lab him. We've talked a lot about his V-Trigger too. It's ferocious and really hard to handle, but it's not as hard to handle as it once was because of V-Shift. You can V-Shift out of a number of his setups, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, he used to be able to melt your entire life bar off of, just kind of going crazy. And it's like, now, you probably don't want to V-Shift his first mix-up because a lot of Blanka players have kind of labbed that and set that up. But that second one, that kind of, he's going to basically keep you in the vortex. It's like, look for your opening, V-Shift out of there, maybe do the V-break just to, knock him back. And at that point in time, once Blanka is out of his V-Trigger, he's a much worse character.
How do you feel when you're fighting against a Blanka? Like when you're in neutral, do you feel stressed, or are you
yeah.
like, I don't. I feel like
Yeah.
he's got a bunch of things where he can pounce at you. Like literally, he can pounce at you, or he can do the ball and whatnot. And those are, especially when I first started playing against Blankas, were kind of scary. But it's like the payoff for those things is not that great. I feel like his only real strong tool is V Trigger 2, like you said. But the fact that I feel so comfortable in neutral in this game against this character is super telling for me. And so, and you're right, V Shift kind of puts a damp towel across his V Trigger 2, and that's really all I see him having legitimately. And so, hey, 43rd overall for me.
Yeah, you need to play smart and steady against Blanka, and most Blanka players are going to be doing anything but playing smart and steady. They're all about keeping you off balance and guessing, and that's how come I don't usually feel comfortable with it, because it's like, how long before Blanka does something random where I've got to deal with it and I'm just probably not expecting it, And I play a very heavy control character. I'm not trying to rush Blanka down. I'm trying to get him in spots where I'm advantaged, right?
Mm.
And that's where but look, this is what Blanka's always been. He's a shenanigans based character. Capcom made him in that style. This is where he should be, at the lower part of the tier list. This is what Blanka is, and there would be so many complaints if he was much higher on the tier list for most people. It'd just be like, why did you make a shenanigans-based character really strong? That's really bad game design.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty happy he's at the lower end of the tier list. It's where he belongs.
I think Dan and Blanka belong down there. Yeah. Who is your 43?
43 for me is Alex. And Alex ends up in no man's land most seasons, and I think Capcom actually gives him okay buffs every year, but he's starting at such a rough point in time. I think it's hard for him to get much of a foothold and put himself in contention in the tiers. But where did you have Alex at?
I have Alex at 36, still in this batch, still in the bottom 11 here.
Yeah.
But Alex, for me, I am afraid of this character in neutral. He's got some really good individual tools that his main problem has been that he's never gotten them to work well with each other. And they do more now than ever before, but still. So he's one of those characters that can absolutely roll you over. He can get you in neutral, especially with that big boot or the lariat that they keep buffing, and his arm just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, Akira style. Not the Akira in this game, the other. And then, and like he's got not vortex, but he's got some situations where it's scary. A lot of them are kind of fake or gimmicky, but if you haven't labbed him, he gets away with stuff. And then he's always got the threat of like maybe a sudden stun gun or a stomp from nowhere. That doesn't add up to a lot of wins for Alex, but it adds up to scary situations. And so he doles out the damage. He can get you. He's rolling the dice, and the dice are not in his favor. But when they do come up, and they do come up, he's gonna roll you over. And so I can't put him down too far on the tier list. I mean, still bottom 11, but that's Alex for me.
His KO power is really strong, and as you just said, a few correct reads, and you're going to end your opponent in seconds. Especially if they have not labbed the matchup much, which is the case for a lot of people, because why are you going to lab against Alex when people like Akuma and Rashid exist, right? And I personally feel like this leads people into thinking that Alex is better than he is, because he's just this massively explosive robbery character, and they tend to forget like how many hard reads it takes to get Alex actually into that point to do that kind of stuff. He's got terrible defense, not so great Okazemi, especially for a grappler. I think Alex is hands down the worst grappler in Street Fighter V, and that's not a good thing in this game. Flat out for me, if you like consistency, don't watch Alex in this game, because 1 minute he might look viable and decent, but over time you're just going to see that he's, in my opinion, one of the worst characters in the game, and only the most hardcore players are like sticking with this guy for good reason.
Mm-hmm. All right, my number 42. This is gonna be interesting. I'm not super sold on this, but it's to the best of my ability from what I've seen thus far. Number 42 for me is Oro. Oro probably won't land this low when all is said and done, but from what I have seen so far, people are saying, yeah, he's got potential, but they haven't been able to realize it. And then a lot of the people that have been playing him seem to have reverted to other characters because he doesn't feel like he's worth it. After that fast fall was gone, I don't know how much attention Oro's been getting relative to that and relative to before. And so it's like, yeah, I see that V trigger that we talked about on the podcast before. I was very afraid of Tengu Stone being a robbery V trigger. People keep dropping it left and right, or even using the other one because it's easier to deal with. I've seen some threatening stuff from Oro. I've lost a round or two, but I see him very infrequently. And when I do, he's it just seems like he's the character that's pretty dang hard to wrap your mind around, to wrap your fingers around, and people have not been fleshing him out to that potential that I do think is probably there. But I haven't seen enough with this character to say that he's really that scary. And again, I can see a future where that changes, but until it does, I'm like, I don't have faith in him, and it didn't feel right putting him above many of these other characters.
Yeah, I actually have Oro clear up at 30th. Some people might feel this is too high, probably this guy I'm talking to over here, but you're starting to see some potential of Oro's being unlocked, especially with his checkmate V-trigger, the Tengu Stone. Oro is among the most technical characters in the entire game, and he hasn't been out that long. And, people feel he's kind of like a middling character in this game, are low tier, right? Being technical and not that strong, we've talked about it before, it ends up being sometimes a death knell. But here's the thing about it. There's a handful of super strong Oro players who emerged in Third Strike. And you'd run across these players in tournament, and even though he was not very popular in that game, in the hands of a pro-level player who put the time in, he was super scary. And that's the reason I've got him at 30th.
I don't think we'll ever see that. I don't think we'll ever see that with Street Fighter V. I don't think the passion is there for 5 for people to dig that far into it. And I think once this game goes away, I don't think you're going to see a huge scene of people excavating it continually. To the point, and I don't think you're going to see it in a lot of tournaments. And if that's the case, then I don't think you have that situation where you have enough longevity in the game for people to unlock, so to speak, that level of Oro.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got another year and a handful of months, a year and 6 months or something like that, probably of this game, and I think that's enough time to really get in there, especially with the new balance updates that's going to be coming in March, right after they probably announce Street Fighter 6. They're going to have that pop out, and I think Oro is going to get some decent buffs in there. But I mean, one of the big things about it, we've mentioned it, but the Tengu Stone always gives him a puncher's chance of just closing out a round by doing 50 to 60% damage, or even more if you throw in like a mix-up or reset, and he's got a tool for darn near every situation in the game. The problem is those tools are complex and hard to use. So he's going to take time, and a lot of people who picked him up, as you say, have already dropped him. That was completely expected for me. But there's just a handful of Oro loyalists who just love this character, and I think they're going to emerge and kind of show up in a handful of regions, a handful of tournaments, and they're going to bop people. Because if you have not put in a lot of time against this character, he can really mess you up, because like I just said, he has a tool for every situation in this game.
Mm-hmm. I think that's been a thing that we've seen before, where a character has like a ton of tools, but then it's so hard to specifically put them all in their place and do that consistently, that like that in and of itself, well, like you've said many times, the technicality really nerfs them in a sense. And so but if anybody here is like that's listening is an Oro master, or on the way to becoming an Oro master, an Oro faithful, we should say, I would like to hear what you have to say about this character in terms of where you might put them on the tier list, because again, I don't have a ton of faith in this particular placement, this particular character, and my placement of him, because I've seen so little of him. He's one of 2 characters that I'm just kind of like, eh. But I do want to hear, because that's kind of where the most excavation needs to be, because he's one of the newest. So. Okay, number 41. Who you got?
I've got F.A.N.G. F.A.N.G is really set up with a bunch of crafty tools, and he's not a terrible character in the hands of an elite player. He can do some zoning tricks. He's very slippery, right? He's so slippery that few other characters can kind of keep up with his movement options in this game. The problem is those movement options don't result in a lot of like damage or great stuff for F.A.N.G. It's mostly like he's kind of dodging out of the way so he can do some of his mediocre zoning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but where did you have F.A.N.G at?
I have him the very top of this final segment. I have him at 34th.
Okay. Yeah.
And
so
yeah, like everything you're saying there is pretty true. He comes across as very scary because the few F.A.N.Gs that you run into, similar to like, might be the case with Dhalsim or Honda, you don't see a ton of people playing the character, but when you do, they're the key people that have really figured him out. I think kind of like what you were saying about Oro, if the game had enough time. And he's got these crazy weird traps and similar like
Well, I want
infinite
to actually go
pressure
back to
strings.
the
Mhm.
top players you're talking, like, Vega Patch and a few others who are just these amazing Fallen players. Mono's another one and stuff. And this is a character to me who's heavily defined by your own individual skill. It's not like Fong is carrying you to wins in Street Fighter V. You're putting him on your shoulder and being like, okay, let's freaking go up the mountain. But is that how you see it, or is it more of like, there's this character's better than I'm seeing? Because to me, it's all the players doing, the heavy lifting with this guy.
He's got some input the stuff, but even that is not like input the stuff and like where G would be like insert the sequence and then maybe it's gonna like lop half of their life off. It's like for Fong, it's input the sequence and you might get a little bit of damage and poison them, so maybe a little additional damage. It's little tiny bits and pieces, and I think that's what really separates him. He's a weird, different character with damage over time, so Capcom's always been really careful around him. So yes, I agree with you, but the chances that he takes still don't amount to a ton for him usually. I mean, he can get a full crush counter combo and do some damage there, but he's just so wonky. And like you say, I think if you lab him or if you kind of know things like where to stand, how to play against him, the fact that like I remember getting some advice from Brolhinho at Evo because I was about to play a
Mhm.
Fong player, and he said, "Oh yeah, Fong," or maybe he had just played a Fong player. And I was like, "I always have trouble with that matchup." He says, "Oh, you just zone him," and it's like, "Wait, you zone him?" It's like, "Yeah, as Necalli, you
Mhm.
just zone him out. You just keep him away, and like, what's he gonna do? He has to
Yeah.
come to you, and when the onus is on him, that character falls apart." And like, oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
when you think about things like that, like the character's good at a few things, but you have to be so multifaceted and able to switch gears so much in this game, and I don't know that he necessarily can. I think that's where his big weakness is. And then, like we said, the chances that he does have to take, a lot of times, like they'll when they're go in his favor, they still don't give him all that much
Yeah.
relative to a lot of other characters.
Yeah, he's one of the most unique characters in this game, which is pretty cool. Like you want unique characters, and if his style and approach fits what you want, there you go. That's where you're seeing the Fong players in tournament that do really well, right? You can make this character work at high levels of play, which is kind of crazy for someone this low on my list, but that is, kind of the nature of Street Fighter V. But it's hard. It's really
Mhm.
hard, and it's just that's how come I've got him at 41st. It's just like, yeah, he's been out so long, and so few people have actually been able to make him work, and most people have dropped him. That picked him up over time. So
Yeah. Okay, so he was my 34. For me, number 41 is Sagat. Sagat is a
oh
character that
wow,
if he wins some crap, then maybe we can talk about putting him up because he's been one of those characters that everyone was like, yeah, he's not going to be great. He's a zoner in Street Fighter V, and unless you're an amazing zoner, you're not going to be all that great. He's never really been an amazing zoner, and I just haven't seen even the best actually make things work with him. And I don't think this game benefits him all that much. There's talk about when V Shift was introduced that it's going to be all about the zoners. I don't think that we've seen that. I don't think that we've seen V Shift be a massively helpful thing for zoners. And in fact, you can use it against fireball characters in the mid screen to actually just push them to the corner in a lot of scenarios. So it also harms him in that way. And so yeah, he's got some stuff, but I've never, for as long as he's been out, I've never seen people bring that all together. Bonchan's got some cool stuff. I know Zaffarino plays a lot of Sagat and does decently well, but I just haven't seen the results from this character. I've played him a little bit myself, especially after he first dropped. He's fine, I guess, but in this batch, like I can put a lot of other characters easily above him, and just he doesn't have of a lot on his resume behind him to back him up.
yeah. For me, I've got him at 33rd, much higher than you. And the difference here is that I look at the other characters that Sagat is surrounding, and I would rather play Sagat than those other characters. I think Sagat's actually got a number of tools that are better than the low tiers, and that's how come I've got him a little further up than that, or a good bit further up than that. But the problem is like his lack of tournament results and other stuff. Like I even wanted him to put higher
Wait, you
than like
said you'd
33rd.
rather play against Sagat than those other
No,
characters?
no, I'd rather play as Sagat than those
Oh,
other
as
characters.
Sagat than those.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would much rather use him because again, he's a powerhouse mid-range fighter. He does big damage when he's able to manipulate his opponent. However, this is Street Fighter V. Good luck manipulating anyone for any extended period of time. You just can't do it in this game
He's got like a trick and
consistently.
a half, and then if that trick and a half doesn't work, it's like, what are you gonna do with him?
Now, on the other hand, I have seen Bonchan play Sagat at the highest of levels and get quite a bit out of him. Zaffarino, you mentioned as well. And the thing about Sagat, he's the king. He's one of the most popular characters in the history of Street Fighter, and there's not that many people playing him. And it's so I get the lower ranking with this guy. I think he has a little bit more juice, but not a lot more. We're basically saying, is he bottom tier or is he low tier? That's pretty much the debate we're having right now. I think he's low tier, but it doesn't mean, I could see the thing about him being bottom too. Just on usage alone, it's pretty abysmal for him.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 40 for you. What you got?
At 40, I've got E Honda.
I don't have E Honda in this grouping at all.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest scrub killers around, and he's a big-time winner at low levels of play, but as you rank up, less and less people fall prey to his tactics.
Let's talk about Honda when he pops up on my list, because I think that'll be an interesting discussion. So we'll shelve him for now.
Yeah, that's not a
problem. A little asterisk next to him, and we'll bring him up later. So my number 40 then is Falke. Falke was going to be lower. In fact, I was going to put Falke maybe between Blanka and Dan or next to Blanka, but then she just won a major, right? So it's like, if I'm going to give Sagat crap for not winning much or not appearing in results, I got to give Falke something for winning. And I have heard that she's become significantly better. It's probably that people aren't giving her much of a chance because of her history. Maybe that's part of the why we're not seeing as much of her. But when push comes to shove, it's like I've fought against higher level Falkes online, and they know their stuff. I guess that's the significance of it. And then so after a few matches, I'll learn, okay, I can figure out Falke fairly quickly, and that's not always the case with all these characters. And especially for me, I usually have to figure things out of the game and then come back to the game. I can figure out Falke kind of in the game fairly rapidly, and if that's the case, it's like that's not a good look for a character that everyone already knows is not the best. And it's like, well, what's her new stuff? What's her goofy stuff? If I can figure that out pretty quickly, like I have, it's just like, yeah, she's just not getting things done for me.
Yeah, I've got Falke at 34th, a lot higher up than you, because I think she's a good bit better than she once was. As you mentioned, she won a CPT event, but even before then, you started seeing her regularly appear in the results of tournaments, not just at the very end. She racked up one 5th place finish and 2 9th place finishes on the CPT, like just this year. And Capcom mainly buffed her ability to control people mid-screen, and shockingly enough, it worked. Because they buffed, they buffed characters before, but Falke is actually difficult to approach now, and if you're reckless, she's capable of lopping off huge portions of your life for doing so. She can zone out further now. Like, to me, this is a much improved character, and various tier lists I'm seeing up online, it's like people are like, yeah, this is a good character. Relatively good character compared to where she was, which was worst in the game or second worst in the game. Now she's I've got her 10 spots up from that. I think she's quite a bit better now, and if you play an experienced Falke, which I know you've done as well, they can mess you up now, where before it was like pretty much not free wins, but like good luck. So
it sounds like her improvement for you is about 10 spots, and for me it was about 3 spots. So she is improved, but to how much, I don't know. Number 39, who you got?
Number 39, I've got Juri, and so where do you have Juri at? I'm curious.
And not in this section.
All right,
tell me about Juri.
Yeah, we've got a lot of controversy at this lower part, right? Mm-hmm. So, Juri's what happens when you take a highly technical character but make their rewards mostly because fighting against an experienced Juri player, if you don't know the match, it's typically going to result in a loss, right? And this leads people to think that she's better than she actually is. However, if you stay out of range, that makes it difficult for her to charge up her moves, and then you bait out some of her more obvious setups, like the EX flip kick into V trigger, you just neutral jump it, and then she lands right in front of you, and you've got a big punish window for her. I'm
afraid of Juri's neutral. That's the thing for me. That hop kick that's also a crush counter, and that movement moves like that in Street Fighter are secretly, and not so secretly, but not often acknowledged as really good. They're really powerful. That tiny movement, that tiny like, oh, I was here and now I'm here, and it's not because I walked or dashed. That's a big deal for a lot of moves in the interactions, especially if it's got crush counter high priority properties. Her movement speed's pretty dang good, and like the people that play her are really refined at this point. Like, you're not running across a lot of Juris that don't know what they're doing. Yeah. I go back and forth with Juris, but I am never comfortable playing against her, and that's like even when I've got her in the corner or whatever. I mean, she still has a good reversal DP. and can just go ham on you. So I mean, she's not amazing. She's got other characters that do neutral better than she does, that dole out damage at a higher rate than she does. But like for all the other characters that I have here that have certain faults and stuff, she has a relatively solid base. It's just that she doesn't go super high above that from where she starts, something like that.
Yeah, I personally would still like to see some more buffs for her because of, she's a very cool character. She's one of the most popular characters in the game, in at least Street Fighter. Not playing wise, but in terms of like, just what people love. It's like Ryu, Juri, Ken, all this. She's up there, right? And you make a technical character low tier or mid tier or whatever, and this is kind of what happens, and it's really disappointing to me because I think Juri is a very nice character in this. She's got interesting stuff. It's just so few people actually play her and put time into her. And again, I really think she falls apart a lot when you lab her. She's much like Alex and a few others. It's really key that you are at very specific ranges with Juri. If you are outside of those ranges, she is a much better character. Yeah, but if you're in those ranges where she basically kind of can't charge her stocks and she can't do some of her wild stuff, she can still win, but it's much harder for her. That's kind of how I see her.
Mm. So what was she for you? What number?
39th.
39. Okay, so for me, 39. Do you have Birdie in your bottom tier?
I do not. He's
I
further
do.
up.
I do. Birdie is a character that was, I mean, he's won a Capcom Cup in the past, back in season 2. And he was a character that had a ton of gimmick BS about him, and Capcom has whittled away that gimmick BS over and over and over again throughout the years. And unlike Rashid, who they've hit, or Akuma, who they've hit, and whom they've hit, and like it's had some effect, but not massive. I think it's had massive effect on Birdie because I think his bench didn't run that deep. I think he had a couple of really goofy scenarios, goofy situations he could easily put himself into, and then he had huge benefits off of those. But Capcom has nerfed them one way or another, and now he's just kind of gimmicks that a smart player can make happen. And you see some smart birdies. Like I run into that, what's his name, Upchain God, I think is his name. He's a higher ranked birdie player, and we go back and forth. But even when I'm playing like my early Akira and I don't have my bearings yet, I still feel like I can do something, and I have a fighting chance against this like grandmaster or ultra grandmaster or whatever he is, birdie player. And it really comes down to the birdie player's reads and stuff like that. He's like a
Yeah.
better Blanka in that respect, but I'm still like not massively afraid. I know the things that he wants to do, and if I thwart them, he's got a really hard time on defense. His gimmicks just aren't really there anymore, and still he can win rounds. Any character can win rounds. He can win matches, but I think he's a shell, a big fat shell of the character that he used to be. Thank goodness, because I didn't like his design when he was good, and unfortunately, I think he was poorly designed. And then when they took away what made him good, it just immediately plummeted him down to the bottom tier.
Yeah, I've got him at 27th, and he was definitely too strong for too long. And his ability to force the opponent into bad situations was just too easy for him, or it was just, he could just kind of organically make it happen too often. But I do think he's been kept somewhat intact, even though the fighting game community is like Birdie's blah blah blah. It's like, go look at the results, because he's still placing in pretty much every tournament that you can see out there. And yeah, he's not in the top 8 anymore, but there's still a number of players who play him and are placing with him. He's a YOLO character.
I think he's a scrub killer for sure.
Yeah. And if you're going to make a character who gives two craps about the opponent and forces you into hard reads all the time, you don't want them to be that strong. So the fact that Birdie's where he's at right now, I'm very happy with. Again, he's more a grappler than a brawler, just kind of like his very nature. He's not based around command grabs, but like the way he makes you play is very grapplery, right? So Birdie players, like they keep saying he's abysmal, maybe compared to where it once was, sure. But again, he's still a pretty good character if you ask me, and he's still a threat to place in tournament every single time you run across one. That's just kind of the nature of Birdie. He's the meta of this game really does favor him pretty darn well.
I think he has to play neutral. I don't know about that. I think he has to play neutral now, and they've made his neutral so like he's whiff punishable and he's kind of predictable, and he can't just say, "Well, I'm skipping neutral and going into EX shoulder or whatever it is, bull
Bullhorn,
Yeah.
Mm.
And because he doesn't have that, it's like sometimes he'll get you with those things. Sometimes he'll dolphin dive and it'll still catch you, and like sure, whatever. And then he's in and he can do Street Fighter 5 mix-ups, and he's got that going for him. But he's so manageable and neutral now, and he doesn't have those gimmicks to fall back on to just skip neutral, that I think that leaves him in the bottom 11.
Yeah, if you talk to Karen players about how easy it is to manage a
I
neutral,
don't give two
you don't get too
anythings about Karen players' opinions. Those privileged. We'll get to her.
Yeah.
I'm sure not in this video though. So who do you have for number? Is it 38?
Yeah, 38 would be Gill for me. And I really did not want to put Gill this
I
low,
was like,
but
that kills you, doesn't it? Didn't you want Gil to be higher?
it's the big problem is he's been heavily explored, and most people have had trouble sticking with him long term. Yeah, his 2-frame parry, it's great. And you'd think alone that would make him strong, but in my opinion, you'd be wrong. But where do you have Gill at?
I have Gil in the next batch. I have him
Okay.
at 31, but I will
Okay,
talk about
not
him
too far
here.
off.
I don't have a ton of opinion on Gil. We've played Dream King's Gil, and Dream King's a decent player, and you know has figured stuff out. He's got some cool setups. He's got amazing combos. I think one of Dream King's best attributes is his ability to figure out and perform combos. And Gil is combofactory.com for sure. But with all of the things that he has, all of the flash, all of the potential it looks like he has with all the crazy, V skill, V trigger, retribution stuff, he's still not putting things together. And the opinions about this game are all over the damn place right now. But a lot of the opinions about Gil are like lower mid at best, and then probably bottom tier. People just do not like Gil, and I mean that's not the only hill I'm dying on here. Or that's not the only thing that I'm going off of, because I have a couple of characters that I think are against that have that emerge as like everybody has a similar opinion about this character, and I don't agree. And so there are so few characters like that where everybody agrees on them. But Gil seems to be one of those lower tiers, and I think he's okay. I think he can do some stuff. He's not just a fish to be shot in a barrel, but I don't think he's amazing. And people have been exploring this character. People have been labbing him. You've seen this is what I found in training mode. How do I put this into a game? How do I put this into a match? And the ends have not met for him. So I don't have him in the bottom 11, but I don't have him much higher than that.
Yeah, his fireballs have a lot of startup on them, and they're often not true block strings because of that. And that allows a number of fighters in this game to blow right through his fireballs, and therefore is zoning way too easily. And if Gil can't zone, he's forced to try to navigate his way inside, which he can do, but it's not easy for him. And he's got stuff like a considerably worse knee than Urian, and he's got a very floaty jump. He does have a great dash, however, and he can really dish out the damage once he gets in and especially get you painted for a retribution kind of setup. But he's massively technical, and he needs too many hard reads to play at a high level.
Yeah.
And this keeps him really underwhelming in my opinion for the most part. He looks great when you get a few hard reads and get his 2-frame parry going and some retribution combos. He looks fantastic. You're like, oh my gosh, like Gil, why is he so low? But you have to start relying on playing neutral, zoning with them, and you just got people like Balrog who on reaction, like the moment he sees a fireball, just spin right through it, knock him out, and it's like Balrog's in on you now. What are you gonna do, Gil? And yeah.
For Gil, like one of the very, very simplified ways I might think about it is that like he has to be in a place where he can, or the player has to be in a place where they can get you to jump at a high fireball. Like when that's where Gil's at, that's where he's really at advantage, because he's manipulated things far enough along to get you to jump when he predicts you will. But even then, it's still something of a prediction. It's not hard, like he's for sure going to get the advantage here. And so for all the time that he doesn't have his opponent, the player doesn't have their opponent in that place mentally, Gil's really kind of having a hard time. So, and certain characters don't care. Some characters are like, I don't care if you throw high or low. Like Balrog probably just go through with the ability to go through. So it's like he's good against characters where fireballs are a thing, and even then he's got to be a decent bit ahead of his opponent. The player has to be a decent bit ahead of their opponent to really make him shine.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so number 38 for me is Zangief, the red cyclone. Or I think he's the iron cyclone now. Either way, he's not that good. This is a character. Well, first of all, do you have him down here?
I have him lower. I have higher. I should say I have him at 31st, but still fairly low on the list.
Yeah. So Zangief, he's got some stuff, but similar to like what I was talking about with Birdie, his neutral is just not good. He just struggles so much there. And if I just sit there and react to what Zangief tries to do, it's like, what is he going to do? Like, sometimes it works out, and then he has something of a vortex to scare you with. Sure, Zangief can win rounds, Zangief can win matches, but dude, I see this guy
Hold on.
struggling.
I have to interrupt you to say you say something of a vortex. His vortex is one of the best in the game. Like, I mean, it's. Do you disagree with that or
Yeah, it's
like?
good. It's good, but
Okay,
it's not enough to get him to win. And it's like you
um,
guess your way
fair
out. Yeah,
enough.
plus V shift. It's like
Yeah.
it's just the
Okay.
benefits of that are just not great. And also, it's hard to time stuff in this game. I challenge people with wake up jab. I get challenged with wake up jab, and that is a very, very, very valid option,
Hmm.
especially if you're playing online. So, like all things considered, it's like, man, this character has to work so hard, and I can see as I'm playing against any Zangief player online. I can see the sweat and the stress and how much, like, I can see it in my mind's eye what's going on the other other side of the match, and I almost feel bad, but not that bad because I want to get my sweet LP, but it's just like, what's he gonna do? And you see him get frustrated. You see him go for more heavy punches than he should, and you just counter him. You say, "I'm sorry, man, but you're pushed to the corner now." Or you see him jump, you're like, "Oh, here comes a jump." Sometimes hard reads, yeah, it'll win you, but I just it's so hard for Zangief, and I feel so comfortable against him, regardless of who it is I'm playing. It's just sorry.
Yeah, shout outs to V Shift because he's quite a bit worse than he was in a previous season, where he was one of the. Some people had him up there in like the top 15. Some people had him up there in the top 10.
Hmm.
So I only got him down to 31st because I don't think he's fallen off just an amazing amount because Kichipamu and a few other people are still playing him. He's still viable. But he is a hard read the hell out of your opponent character. And, when you talk about KO power plus Okazemi, like Geef is, right up there among the best characters in the game. But can you consistently get to those spots on screen? And not only that, but one of the big problems that Geef has in this game, of course, is just you can pressure the hell out of him. Where in previous games, he had his lariat as kind of a reversal and other stuff like that. And you didn't want to get too close to his command grabs. This game, he's all about the Oki and all about getting momentum and then holding it. And the moment he loses momentum, Geef can fall apart almost like Dalsum because of like how much you can rush him down. And if you've got a rush down character against Geef and he loses momentum, he can be done right
He's
there.
comfortable at one spot on the screen and one spot only, and that is when he's in your face with advantage. Everywhere else, it's hard for him, and it's really hard for him to get to that one spot. So, yeah, he's
Yeah.
he's shooting half court shots all the time.
Well, and then
Um,
once he does get to that one spot, you were talking about V shift. Like you can V shift all the way. Now the counter is like if the Geef player knows that V shift is coming, and I've seen it a few times, they can double dash or do whatever to get in there. But that's a hard read. That is not a consistent thing. You've basically got to think, okay, my opponent's probably going to V shift here. Let me go. And it's like you've got to be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everything with Zangief in
He
this
was
game, and
already
that
making hard reads because he was either going to jump after you, if you were
yep,
going to like jump on wake up or not, or block and whatnot. But now it's just another layer to Zangief. It just makes it harder for him. One
yep.
more way, it could not go his way. Or if he's ready for V shift and you don't V shift, maybe you're out because he did the V shift counter and you woke up jab and he dashed into it, something like that. So
Yeah, and you've got some zoners like Rosa, Manat, and Guile who just give him problems, and it's just he's got some of the more lopsided matchups in the game, but you also have some really good lopsided stuff in his favor where if you have to get close to, win and all that, Geef is pretty decent in those matchups. He's not too
mm.
bad. I wouldn't call him terrible, but definitely worse than he was before.
Who's your number? Is it 38? Have you said you're 38?
I have got 37. Gill was my 38.
Okay, who's your 37?
37 is Necalli.
Oh, I don't
Uh,
have him in this section. I did at first, but I
mhm.
was I was trying to be fair. And I didn't put him in the section, but we can let's save him. Let's save him for the next one because it'll be
Okay.
in the next section. My 37 was actually our Mika,
Hmm.
and I know you're not gonna. I know she's not here for you. I think our
Yeah.
Mika is probably number 2 for you overall or something like that. But just really quick, I don't have a ton to say about Mika. Maybe we'll save her for when she pops up on your end. All I would say here is just pretty much everything I just said about Zangief, but she has some gimmicks to get in with. She can do her drop kick, and sometimes it's going to work a little more often. She can do her sudden splash and cut her jump arcs, and so that gives her something in the neutral to be something of somewhat afraid of. And then if she gets in, she can be a real pain. And her V triggers, I should say, can be kind of comebacky and can rob you and at least get her some mileage. So she's close to Zangief and a lot of the faults that he has, but she has some gimmicks that sort of put band-aids over there, give her shortcuts some of the time, and that's why she's above him.
Gotcha.
Okay, so who's your 36 then?
36 is Cody. Where do you have Cody at, first of all? Because
I
he's
had
very.
Cody. I had Cody way down, and
Mhm.
then the more research I did, I had to keep bumping him up and up and up. He's
Okay.
not super high, but I don't have him here in the bottom. But I don't have a ton to say about Cody. Let's jump into him now.
Where do you have him at exactly, though? I'm curious.
25th.
20. Ooh,
25th
wow. Okay.
because and I tried not to be too influenced here
Hmm.
by other people, but I mean this was one of the few where I didn't have a ton to say about him. I think he can be really solid, but I see fewer and fewer Codys. And I mean there's some tech coming out right now with his knife being a lot better than it
Yep.
used to be, sure. But I haven't experienced it much. I haven't seen a lot of it. I've seen like a couple of videos of Shine doing things. It's like fair enough, cool, but that's like Shine at NLBC. I need more than that to boost him too high. And I mean, it boosted him up to 25th overall with some of
Yep.
the things that I've heard and his potential. And I've seen some solid play, but I couldn't do any higher than that. And even this feels like a little bit of a stretch for me.
Yeah, I want him to be better than he is because I really like this character. I know that's sacrilegious for some people who are really big fans of Cody. Shouts to Nick, not much attention, Stan. But anyway, I'm
He
actually
doesn't
seeing a
like this
number.
Cody though.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, but as you said, V-Trigger 2, get people away from the pipe, the command grab stuff that he has, and going over to the knife. You know that knife is really good, and they're
Sure.
making people are making it work really well now. So this guy is a beast when he gets in your face, and he makes you hold a lot of plus moves, and it's kind of hard to take your turn sometimes. He's also got that very nice 2-frame dodge and parry move. It helps him from being zoned out throughout the match, but he's very susceptible to random. And when someone just happens to throw out a just do it move, it tends to home in on Cody and smack him right in the face. And
If you're
from
not good
there,
with just do it moves in this game, you got a problem.
yeah, and from there, his defensive options are just really limited. So instead of calling Cody a glass cannon, I'd actually call him an unstable cannon, where he fires a few of the wrong shots off, and maybe they hit you, maybe they don't, but he manages to knock himself over in the process and become easy prey. That's why I have Cody this low, because it's hard to mitigate the risk you're taking when you're playing offense with him. And he oftentimes has to play fairly safe and resort to his mediocre fireball game to kind of approach your opponent. And it's just not a great strategy overall because it doesn't lead to a lot of wins, but it leads to some. He's good if you can make all that work. So in the hands of a really strong player, yes, Cody's probably better here than the 36th placement. I have him. The damage, his setups, man, they're great. But the risk you have to take to get there and stay there, and then you have to make up for his lack of defense once you get blown up for it. I couldn't put him any higher than 36, even though I wanted to.
Mm. So I had Alex at 36th. I have at number 35 Nash. Did we
The
line up
same
on that
place
one?
I've got him. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, matched up on that.
Cool. Yeah. So Nash is better than he was because he and Alex were booty butt cheeks tier at the very bottom of the entire tier list for way too long. I have some problems with Nash. I think he's got interesting neutral, and I guess you can see the theme coming here that the ability in neutral is a huge factor, at least for me in this game. I think that if you can control neutral and you don't have to take risks, that's a big deal. Nash takes some risks, but like for his fireball, for instance, the risk is on the startup, and if he's far enough away, hey, that's kind of the fireball that you want because you don't want people reacting to it. I mean, if they react to it, they react to it. But if they didn't do it in time and then they try to do it late, like he's swatting you out of the air every time because his recovery on it is actually relatively quick. It's just all in the startup. His movement is, I mean, his walk speed's abysmal, but his movement options are really good, and he can zip about the
Mhm.
screen with moves, with maneuvers, with his V trigger, and everyone still doesn't know his V trigger 2 very well, so he can eke out some hits with that, and it can go into some pretty big stuff. They've extended the kinds of combos that he can do.
I have to give a pro tip about Nash's V-Trigger 2. It's called block high. That's how
Mhm.
you beat it. Block high. It's tricky. You wouldn't think they'd give him an overhead instead of just block high. But anyway,
Mhm.
we're saying.
Yeah, so here's my kind of nutshell approach against in my experiences against Nash players. I will lose to him, but if I play them over and over again, similar to Falke, I can figure him out. Not as quickly as Falke, and some of his gimmicks or some of his approaches, some of his like, yeah, you're either going to be ready for this or you're not, are more effective than hers because she's more of a zoner anyway. He's kind of trying to kind of trying to make you come to him, but then spring on you at certain times. He's always ready to just like leap forward with certain like the EX scythe and things like that. And he's got some decent stuff to work with, but you can figure out his game plan. And when you do, he doesn't have enough in that particular tank to get him much higher than this. And so yeah, he's still one of those lower tiers. His payouts are just not enough for the kinds of risks that he does have to take when he takes them. And maybe it's not so much the risks, but it's like the how transparent his game plans sort of become. Something like that.
Yeah. Nash actually had a CPT win, as you mentioned, for the first time in 4 years in the Brazil CPT event back in May. But he's rarely seen, even with getting some significant buffs. Like, you just don't see him a lot in tournament. This is not like, I would compare him to like a Birdie and a Mika. Like, you see Nash even way less than those characters, right? And it's my thing about Nash is like he was, maybe the most popular character in season 1. Obviously, won a ton of events. Had a really high representation rate back then. But people downloaded him. People, and he hasn't gotten a lot of new tools since then. I know like some of his hopkicks and other stuff are improved, and so he can get some ranges and he can do some stuff. But Nash, again, he's just one of those really inconsistent characters where he looks good 1 minute and then like you just see him get zoned out or rushed down for the entire match, and you're like, man, I'm not buying it. So I've seen a number of players with Nash in like the mid tiers and other stuff, and I'm like, nah. I'm like, he's going from dead last or close to it to this many spots up, 9-10 spots up. That's hard to do. Not many characters can pull that off. So that's, big ups to Capcom for buffing him enough so he could win a CPT event and do other things, because there's some hardcore Nash loyalists for whatever reason out there, they really want to play this character. And so I'm glad he's good enough to actually compete. That is where I think that the distinction is at now with Nash. I think he's good enough to be viable in tournament, very obviously. If you win a CPT event, you're good enough, right? But I don't think he's a great character.
Hopefully his son Luke will reach higher heights than he does.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know that it's his son either. That's just a guess. And then 34, I had F.A.N.G. Did we already hit your 34?
Yeah, my 34th was Falke.
Oh, that's it. We're done.